Hello everyone, this is Borna Kazerani from Melbourne, Australia. I hope you're doing fine. First of all, thank you so very much for all your lovely comments and messages regarding of my live show here on Instagram. And please forgive me if I'm not able to reply you all. Anyways, tonight I want to talk to Dean Walls, who was born in Australia in 1977. He's always been a very socio-political minded person and has always been at the forefront of current trends in the pop culture and society. Dean has run his own successful creative content agency, Arcade Studios, for 10 years. He's a talented designer and filmmaker who's worked with some of the world's biggest brands. In 2020, Dean was cast Dancing with Stars, alongside Beau Ryan, Claudia Karven, actress, Angie Kent, The Bachelorette, and others. He threw himself into the mix and was able to learn to dance perfectly. When he appeared in promo for Channel 9's reality TV show, Married at First Sight, his identity went viral all around the world. In the early days of series, he was the villain of the show. But when fans saw his story play out, he became one of the most loved. Despite his age of 40 years old, Dean is very in touch with a millennial market and understands the younger generation better than anyone of his vintage. If you're interested to find out more about who I'm going to have a conversation with, you can go to Dean's Instagram and check him out. Let me ask him to join me for a conversation now. Dean!
Hello.
How are you doing? Where are you?
Hey. There I am.
Okay, how are you doing?
I'm really good, thanks, mate. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you. It's been quite windy and rainy here in Melbourne.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, it's been crazy. So do you want to say hi to those who are watching us right now and maybe later on?
Yeah, hey, guys. Welcome to the show. And we're going to talk about some really interesting stuff here tonight. So stay tuned. It's going to get a bit crazy. It's going to get a bit political. It's going to get a bit wild. But, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the show and send through any questions if you have any. Are we doing questions tonight?
Yeah, well, if we get a chance, yeah, the questions has already started coming through. So,
okay.
Yeah, I've got my own questions first. So we're gonna
cool, man.
first. So I read about you, apart from the biography, you sent it to me. One of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you about it, as we spoken yesterday, is being judged by those who don't know much about you.
Yep.
I always judged myself by others because of my sexual orientation. And you're being judged because you were in a reality show. So you tell me about it. How did you deal with it, Dean?
How did I deal with being judged and being name calling and bullied and all that kind of stuff? Man, it wasn't easy. I'll tell you right now, it was shocking. Like, I remember the day that this promo dropped of me. So no one had ever heard of me before, never been on TV or anything. And then Channel 9 called me on a Sunday and said, Dean, the first promo of Married at First Sight is dropping tomorrow and you're not going to like it. And I was like, well, why? What's that? And they sort of warned me. They just said, look, the way that you're portrayed in this, it's not going to come across well. And, you know, just be ready. Like, be ready for a backlash. And I was like, what have I done? What have I possibly done wrong that I could have a backlash? Anyway, the next day, they dropped this promo of me and they'd edited me sitting there in a chair with a blindfold on, with a really grim look on my face, and the words "obey" in big red letters behind my head. And then they proceeded to show the world this edit of me saying a few things like, you know, I like to be the alpha male in a relationship. I want a woman that listens to me. I think Australian men are being whipped by their women and I'm sick of it. And look, most of the stuff I said in that promo, I actually stand by 100%. But the context they put it in, especially putting the words obey in big red letters behind my head, they changed the context of it entirely to something that I did not mean. And it made it sound like I was someone that wanted to like control women or like, you know, didn't respect women's kind of, you know, intent. I don't know. So they made me sound like a misogynist basically. So for me, if anyone that knows me, that's like the opposite of who I am. So that was really, really hard. So straight away, that promo drops the next day. You get every media outlet in Australia, every media outlet in London, media outlets all around the world writing articles about Channel 9 is putting people's lives at risk because this misogynist, dangerous individual, Dean Wells, is going to be on this reality show. He's a dangerous man. He shouldn't be allowed on this TV show. He shows the traits of a domestic violence abuser. He's violent. He's a rapist. Like all this kind of crazy stuff. And all that dropped in one day. And man, it's just like, it's the leftist, hardcore leftist extremist media that want to paint this picture for ratings and whatnot. And man, that was really difficult to deal with. Like being called all those names, being called all those things when I'm not any of those things was really difficult to deal with. And really, the only way I got through that time was, first of all, I knew those things weren't true. Secondly, I knew my, you know, pretend wife from the show, Tracy, and I had a really great relationship. We had a lot of respect for each other. Yeah, it didn't work out as a couple or whatever, but we did have great respect for each other. So I knew there was no problem there. All the other people from the show, despite, you know, Channel 9 and the media making it out to be this big war between all of us, we were all friends. Like we all tried to make it a good, exciting TV show, which is what it was. But the public had a completely different perception of me, and they still do. To this day, I get bullied, name called, death threats, all kinds of crazy stuff happens. People calling my phone number, people doxed me. Someone published my phone number to a Snapchat group, and I got like threatening phone calls for like 3 days straight. You know, when I went on Dancing with the Stars, the feminist website Mamma Mia wrote another article about me where they accused me of choreographing my first dance to make it look like the man is in charge. The man, I'm a misogynist, I'm a sexist. There's a girl walking down the street and I accost her and start harassing her, and it's all about the Me Too movement, and I'm throwing her around the stage, and made this big absolute bullshit article about me, you know. And so it still happens to this day. So it's not easy dealing with that stuff. One of the things that gives me strength is that it's taught me so much about the media, about that hardcore extremist, leftist, feminist side of politics and the media. And it's actually opened my eyes, and it gives me strength to see how much lies and how much bullshit comes out of those websites and those media outlets. And that's what gives me strength and drives me to keep going and exposing all that bullshit.
Why did you react? Yeah. Why didn't you leave the reality show as soon as you started, like realizing that you were quite trapped? Did you have that option, like leave it?
No, the show's recorded 3 months before it's on TV, so we don't know. Like we don't know, and they take 3 months to edit it, and they use, you know, crazy editing techniques. They use music to make you look worse. They manipulate the situation to make things look much worse. And you don't know how things are going to turn out until the show goes on air, like 3 months later. Like it was shown on air like in January, I think it was, but it gets shot in like October, November, late December. So I didn't know. As far as I was concerned, I didn't really do anything too bad or too wrong. And I didn't say anything too controversial in the context of what was going on between all those people, what was going on in that relationship. It wasn't that controversial. It wasn't that bad. But when they edited it and they leave out huge parts of the conversation, yeah, it probably looked a bit worse. So at the time, I didn't feel a need to leave the show. In saying that, I did choose to leave in the first week. So every week of Married at First Sight, each couple, the guy and the girl, have to say either stay or leave based on whether they're happy or not that week. And you can say leave if you want. And I wasn't really happy in the first week. I didn't think things were working out. So I said leave, but my partner, Tracy, said stay. So the rules are, if one person says stay, you have to stay. So that kind of just kept going and going and going, and I ended up staying for the whole time, pretty much.
Then it doesn't matter really what we do. People, it's a daily habit of people. They still want to judge you. It doesn't matter. I got stage in my life that I stopped educating people about my sexual orientation as a gay man, and I stopped. Like, there are always people, they don't want to listen, and they believe that whatever they're saying, actually, they're correct. And not argue, just leave, and time will show.
Yeah. What kind of things do you get? Like, have you had situations where people were directly homophobic or nasty or anything to you?
Yeah, you know what? I came from the Islamic country, it's called Iran. So if you're identified as homosexual in Iran, you will be executed. Yeah. All right. So I had that perception, and I came to Australia 15 years ago, and still I see people from the first world country who's giving me exactly the same reaction as people from my motherland. And I leave it. I left it. Said, well, whatever you want to judge, you do it. Some people do not want to really listen. I've noticed people don't want to listen. It doesn't matter what you do. They just don't. Anyways, we've spoken about statements, what Clement Ford said, or for those who don't know who she is. Clement Ford is an Australian feminist writer, broadcaster, and public speaker. And you and many others reacted about what she said on her social. Can you tell me about your impression?
Yeah, so Clementine Ford is a very extremist, nasty, man-hating feminist. She calls herself a feminist, but I don't know if I agree with that that term. I find her just to be a nasty provocateur, and she's written a lot of really nasty things on Twitter. And
why?
One of them, I think she does it, one, to get a reaction. I think two, she's disturbed. Like, she really does hate men, and she blames men and the patriarchy for everything wrong in her life. And she perpetuates this myth that men and the patriarchy are just out to oppress everyone at all times. And that's what is happening in her head. She's convinced herself that there's this evil patriarchy out there just trying to oppress everyone, especially women. And I don't believe that, for one. But then she does these horrible posts on Twitter. So the one she did over last weekend, she posted a tweet saying, honestly, I don't think coronavirus is killing men fast enough. That was the exact words that she used. And look, for me, I'm not one to censor anybody, and I have a pretty extreme sense of humor, and I can handle just about anything. But that was too far. We're in a time where thousands and thousands of men are dying every week or whatever from this horrible virus. There's women, men, daughters, mothers that they're losing their husbands or whatever to this virus without even being able to say goodbye to them, because that's the nature of coronavirus. You go to hospital and you're so, contagious with the virus that your family isn't allowed to come and visit you. And so you might get carted off in a body bag. You might die, and no one ever gets to say their goodbyes to you. It's just a horrible, tragic way to die. And there's nothing funny about this. Oh, sorry. My phone just fell off.
That's
There's
right.
nothing funny about that situation. Give me one sec. And there's nothing, you should not be joking about that situation at all. And as far as I'm concerned, it was completely out of line, completely inappropriate, and she deserves all the backlash that she's getting from it, which she's getting a lot of backlash from it. A lot of people are not happy, and yeah, as she should be getting.
All right. So do you think she's been directed with somebody or the group of people who've been supporting her to make this statement like what she's done?
No, not directly an organized group of people. I think she's part of this world of academia. She's part of this world of hardcore feminists. They all back each other's theories up. They all tell each other, yeah, you're right. Men are evil. Men are this, men are that. Men are the problem with everything. And so they all support each other's rhetoric. So they think that that's a normal thing to say, or they think that's an acceptable thing to say. They don't realize that the wider society, most normal, respectable, good people find that absolutely disgusting and inappropriate. And she spouts out these crazy things every now and then. I think she does it when she's drunk. And then I think like a day later, she regrets it and apologizes. So she apologized for this and then tried to backtrack and say, oh, you know, it was a joke. It was in response to, you know, women being oppressed by the virus. And people are now trying to gender this virus and saying that women are suffering more from the virus because they're the frontline workers, they're the nurses and the teachers and whatnot that have to deal with this or that, and trying to make it a feminist issue, this virus. How can you make this virus a feminist issue? I don't believe that is the case at all. I think more men are dying from it. I think there's a lot of men on the front lines. There's doctors, sanitation workers, all kinds, nurses, male nurses. There's men in every area that she's claiming that it only affects women, and I just don't believe it. I think it's absolutely ridiculous for her and her friends to say stuff like that.
Sounds very interesting to have her on my show. I would like to hear what's the logic behind what she's made that statement. Anyways, one of the things I know about you is that you are very interested in cultural and socio-political issues.
Yeah.
A lot of artists say we are not interested in politics, nor interested talking about it. And I think that's wrong. I think the political changes in any society can impact on the work of every artist. What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think the best artists are very political. I think the best filmmakers are very political, but I also think there's a subtlety to it. You know, like look at Banksy, for example. That guy is a genius. Banksy, the street artist, he does these amazing artworks that don't really say so much, but they communicate such a huge message. Sorry, my throat is drying up right now.
That's okay.
And just give me one sec. I'll be right back.
That's all right. Take your time.
Just let me get a coat. So yeah, for me, I've been a massive fan of, you know, filmmakers like Stanley Kubrick or Spike Jonze and artists like Banksy, or there's so many. But I think artists really should be trying to make change with their art. I think all good art has a message, whether it's literature, a movie, a book. And I think the best artists are the ones that try and make a political statement.
Well, yeah, but again, you don't have that freedom of speech in the Middle Eastern country. You know what I mean? Yeah. And artists are quite afraid to share their honest and true opinion about the government because there are always consequences. You know, yeah. But I always ask this question from those in particular artists who've been on my show to see what's their perspective or impression is about politics, because I believe that whatever whatever, happens in the society regarding of politics can have huge impact or negative gear on anyone's, like any artist's works.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, mate. And like, I know a little bit about your story, coming from Iran, coming from a predominantly kind of Islamist country and culture where, especially being homosexual, being trans, so many things are just, I mean, what's the punishment for being homosexual in Iran? How do you get treated? What happens with the authorities?
Yeah, well, Iran is the only country on the whole planet. If you want to change your sexuality or gender, become man to woman or male to female or female to male, Iran is the only country where issues a new birth certificate for you.
Right.
On the whole planet.
Right.
And if you're identified as a homosexual in Iran, you will be executed.
You will be executed.
Yeah. And you cannot discuss about your problems, and there's always the consequences.
Wow.
And I would like to talk to you about racism also. Racism is one of the hot and sensitive subjects which has been always drawing anyone's attention.
Yeah.
We are living on one of the biggest multicultural countries on the planet. But as I've mentioned to you yesterday, I haven't experienced much about racism in Australia, but it happened to me in America many times.
So you lived in America?
Well, I lived in America for a year, and I was, for a very short period of time, I was living in Dallas, Plano, in America, and I kicked out of stores 3 times, different stores, because I was asked to show my Texas identification or ID card,
right?
And if you don't have it, they would ask you to leave the store, and there was a queue of Americans who were standing in the queue, and they were just shocked, regardless of the way the store manager was acting. And yeah, I was kicked out actually a few times, and but I haven't had much, really, being honest with you, experiences in this regard in Australia. What do you think about that? Because we were talking about that yesterday.
Yeah, man, I think Australians are a little bit more polite than Americans, and maybe I think we're lucky in Australia in that we've always been 5 to 10 years behind America. Like, especially when I was a kid, a TV show that came on in America, it wouldn't make it to Australia for like 5 or 6 years after, or maybe 2 years, 3 years. Movies would take a year or so to come out here. So I think we're lucky in that respect, in that we learn lessons from what happens in America and we can adjust just in time here in Australia. And I think, one of the things that we've learned from America is, that racism just doesn't work. We need to be accepting of people. Like, Australia is a multicultural country as well. And I do believe when someone from another culture comes to Australia, they should at least make an effort to learn about Australian culture, to learn the language as best they can, and to somewhat, become part of the Australian culture. I'm not saying you have to lose all your heritage and lose everything about your past and lose your own history. I do think that we have a culture here. Now, getting into Aboriginal culture and whatnot, that's a whole other story. And, you know, Australian white people probably need to learn a lot more about Australian Aboriginal culture. So I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself here. But the fact is, we have established a culture here in Australia. We live in one of the best countries in the world. We're lucky enough to live in one of the best countries in the world. And I do believe that when someone comes here, they should at least make an effort to learn about our culture and blend in with our culture to a degree. But at the same time, I think Australians are very accepting. We're very polite. We're non-confrontational. And I don't think we're racist. I think there is an element of Australians that are racist, but I think it's a very small percentage. And I think the vast majority of people in general Australia, America, anywhere, I think the vast majority of people are good people. And when I say good people, I mean not racist.
I'm so glad Australia is located so far away from everywhere.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And I love that. I agree with you, but I've been working as an interpreter. So over the past 7 years, I work for federal police. I work at a different court, and I've experienced working with people with different backgrounds and races. But I've also noticed over the past years living in this country that many people came to Australia and they want to continue the cultures, practice what they were doing in their motherlands, and they want to bring it, or they brought it with themselves in Australia or to Australia. So how can we do it? What's the best way?
Man, it's a very good question. I guess I would ask you, because you would know more about it than me. Do you think there are, like, let's say Muslim people, for example, because Muslim culture can be quite confronting, especially to Westerners, because, the hijabs and the burqas, the praying 5 times a day, the language, so many other things that go along with their culture are very foreign to us Aussies, man. We're so isolated. The majority of Aussies don't know about these cultures, and we don't really get to experience it too much. Not like, London and white people in England, at least they're kind of connected to Europe and close to other countries. So they kind of see these cultures a lot more growing up than like us Aussies. Like us Aussies are pretty sort of naive, like isolated people, and we like to think we're very worldly and know about the world, but I really don't think we do. So I guess my question to you is, those Muslim cultures, especially the more extreme elements of them, is it true that, some of those people come over here with the intention of infiltrating Australian culture and turning the world into Sharia law and infiltrating, parts of our government and all that kinds of stuff? Is that a real thing?
Well, I was born as a Muslim, and in Iran you cannot change your religious. It's against of the. Okay, so, and I'm not the fundamentalist, or neither I'm not a fanatic Muslim person, all right? But I always respect. I would like to answer you that way, like, as long as you respect wherever you go, it doesn't matter it's Australia, it doesn't matter it's in America, it doesn't matter Europe, as long as you respect the cultures and rules and regulations, everyone would be happy with that. And if you want to practice to do whatever you want, so it's better to do it for yourself rather than imposing someone. Which even in Australia, one of the strange things that I've experienced, like there were times that people came from the church, they knocked the door, and they were just talking about Jesus and these sort of things. For someone like me who came from the country that we don't know about these sort of things, was quite confronting also.
Really? Wow.
Well,
interesting.
Feel like to push you to become someone or to do something.
So you're talking about the Mormons showed up at your front door in the white shirts and the
from church. I was confused, like, what are you talking about? Well, and I had no clue. But at the end of the day, it's been for a couple of years that I haven't experienced it yet. But doesn't mean they don't exist. But as long as you don't impose your religion, somebody else, I have no problem with that. You know what I mean? And as long as you take someone else, we've got lots of Jewish people who are living here in Australia, in America. But I disagree with what you were saying about Australia and that they can be quite naive. I don't believe that. I am glad I've experienced in America, as well as yourself. And the percentage of racism in America it's far away to Australia. And Australia, it doesn't matter where you go in Australia, and you can probably experience a little bit racism. Australian can be racist towards each other, like in America. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but in America, it really depends on where you live and where you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. Like down south in America, I know there's still a lot more ignorance and racism. I experienced that when I traveled around Kentucky. And obviously not everyone from Kentucky or the South is racist, but it seems like it is a bit more common down in those areas. And again, in Australia, depends where you go, you're probably going to run into more racism. But yeah, I don't think Australians are very racist. And like back to your point on what's the best way to have people from other cultures come to Australia or another country and live together and live in harmony, I think it's just about a bit of compromise.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, and most Aussies, man, and you see Muslim people. I love this, man. I love this about Australia. You see hardcore Muslim people, hardcore Lebanese Christians, hardcore Greeks. They do pick up elements of Australian culture and they sort of become Aussies. And now like Lebanese culture is kind of intertwined with Australian. Like there's a certain Australian Lebanese culture, man, and there's like whole like humor based around, you know, Lebos from out in the area and stuff. Like I'm not being racist here. My sister-in-law is Lebanese, and I got a lot of Lebanese friends, and I love the humor between Lebanese Australian people. You know, it's sort of become this. There's a whole new subculture which is like Lebanese Australians, and then there's like Greek Australians. Iranian culture, I hasn't infiltrated Australia that much. I don't really know that much about Iranian culture yet. Maybe that may happen, but I think it's about just being they're having a bit of compromise on both parts. Like as long as people from those countries come here and show a bit of interest in our culture, and as long as Australians can show a bit of interest in your culture, then everyone's going to get along fine, you know? And that's I think the key to it. It's just a bit of compromise and a bit of understanding and compassion on both sides.
Exactly. In addition to what you're saying, actually, it's all about understanding about each other's backgrounds. And that's it. You know, it's not always about compromising. It's understanding. There's no problem to have a discussion about this sort of topics, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And I believe really the racism comes by ignorance, you know, ignorance. And, you know, and there are always people that are whinging and whatever. Anyway, subject. I want to take you back to years ago when you started making films, because I know you're a filmmaker. So why filmmaking? What? Tell me.
Man, that's a really good question. I guess I've always been interested in music and playing music and creativity, skateboarding. I was a rapper from a young age. I got right into hip hop when I was like 6 years old because my older cousin Mark got me into it. He was into like Run DMC, the Beastie Boys, all these cool like hip hop bands that I'd never heard of, and I just got right into that. And then that kind of led me into skateboarding and breakdancing. And from that, I wanted to start filming that stuff and documenting it, especially skateboarding. So me and my friends we love skateboarding. So then we would start filming each other, and you'd start wanting to learn a bit more about better filming techniques and then editing techniques. And then like, oh, well, we've got a bit of footage here. How do we put music to that? I've got this awesome hip hop song that I want to be skating to. So my first videos were skateboarding videos, and it was like either me skating or my friend skating. And then we'd pick some hip hop song or whatever that we'd want to skate to. And then from there, I started learning more about editing and graphics and design. And then, yeah, I just felt like I had a bit of a knack for it. I found a mentor who happened to be a homosexual guy, which is funny. Philip Hodges, man, he's a character, but that's a whole other story. He took me under his wing kind of thing, and he sort of taught me everything about filmmaking at the time, and he told me that, you know, he thought I had a bit of a talent for it. And I spent about 2 years learning how to edit, and our company had were one of the first companies in Australia to get a hold of Final Cut Pro, which was like the key editing software at the time. And I just started editing, filming, writing scripts for short stories, learning more about graphics. And then I just kind of fell in love with it. And it's like, ever since then, that was like 20 years ago. And that's kind of all I've ever done for a living. That's all I've done my whole life. It's just kind of, it was just kind of an organic thing. I did a lot of surf movies as well. So from skateboarding, I went to like snowboarding and surfing. And then I worked with like Quicksilver and Kelly Slater and some of the biggest surf brands in the world. I cut some of the biggest surf movies of all time. I was the editor on those. And yeah, it's just kind of my passion. I love filmmaking. It's like, it's a combination of music, rhythm, visual experience, design, art, visual arts. It's a combination of timing. All those things go into filmmaking. And that's why it's such a powerful medium. And that's why it's such an interesting thing that you can just spend your whole life learning and getting better at. And yeah, I just love it.
I watched some of them actually, in particular the one that you were doing skateboard.
Yeah.
On Manly Beach, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then there are many talented people in Australia, such as skilled painters, skilled sculptors, skilled film directors, and so on. But why don't the government or people of Australia support as many films and artists as they should? There's not even a TV program that is only for artists. And everything we watch, everything we see is all about sports. Why?
Yeah. Man, that's a good question. I think part of it is that we're an English-speaking country, and Americans are just so good at making film and TV. Like, they make the best bloody TV shows. They make amazing movies, and we can just watch all their stuff. And so, because we can relate to most of American culture, we can relate to most American TV shows. They sort of cover a lot of the same cultural concepts that we have in this country. So I think there's not as much drive. There's not as much financial incentive either, because making a film in America, if you make it big in America or a TV show, you're set for life. You can make millions and millions of dollars. It's a massive incentive. There's much more incentive to make a successful film career over there. Here in Australia, the film industry is tiny. You can make a short film or a feature-length film or a TV show and literally not make a cent, like lose money on the project. Like, it's just not a big industry here unless you're like Crocodile Dundee or one of those very rare movies that end up being huge that come from Australia, but it's just very rare. Like, so I think financial incentives for one, and the fact that we just have access to all the American content, there's just not as much incentive to do it.
But it was not like that. The film industry in Australia was not like that in the past few years. They cut the funding.
Yeah. Well, they cut funding because no Australian films ever make any bloody money. They never make money. Like, and they were giving money to these like too artsy like projects that didn't have any commercial value. Like, they weren't comedies, they weren't funny, they were just these quirky, they're always quirky, bloody dark stories or weird stories about, you know, something that happened in the bush or some weird quirky little family. No one cares about that stuff. Why don't you make films that are big blockbuster films, or make funny films about popular culture, or make, like, you know, just things that people are going to pay money to watch. Like, I think in Australia, we're too focused on like preserving our cultural heritage in film and like making films that have a meaning or that solve some kind of cultural issue or whatever. Like, not every film has to be about that stuff. And in fact, most fun films, like, look at films like Dumb and Dumber, or like just bloody, you know, The Avengers, or big films like that. They're just fun, entertaining films that are just eye candy and funny and exciting. Like, we don't make those kind of films in Australia for some reason. I don't know why. We should.
I don't know, because I've spoken over the past I've been doing this show for almost 74 nights, and I
Yeah,
was lots of Australian artists, and I believe there are thousands and talented Australian artists are living in Australia. But I'm wondering why there is no anybody who's gonna find them. And I thought, well, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. You know what I mean? And I've got really, really good feedback. So I've
yeah,
spoken with Australian artists, and I've been always wondering, like, we're living, as we mentioned prior, we're living in a multicultural country, and they can take advantage in a good way to make a films, to making good theaters, performance, but we don't hear much about them. There's
yeah,
no TV program. There's no, I
yeah.
don't. And you, someone who was born and raised in this country, still don't get
Yeah, man. Well, that's the thing. The other factor is that if you're an Australian actor, why would you stay in Australia when you can go to LA, you can go to America, learn how to speak an American accent, which we can all pick up very easily. Australians grew up watching American TV, so we can turn on an American accent like that. So your options are stay here in Australia, get a part on Neighbours or Home and Away or one of those shows. Yeah, you might make a bit of money, you might have a career out of that for 10 years, or go to America, try and make it in the big time. All our best actors, look at Russell Crowe, even though he's a Kiwi, Nicole Kidman, just the Hemsworths, like so many great Australian actors. And Hollywood is filled with Australian DPs, like Australian crew. So many cinematographers are Australian. So many stunt people are Australian. So many lighting and sound people are Australian. LA is full of Aussies working in the film industry. Like they're all over there. And I don't blame them. Why would you stay here and work in this shitty little industry? There's not much money, not much room for growth. When you can go to LA, you can blend in, especially if you're an actor, you can blend in and speak in an American accent and possibly make it in a massive American film. Like look at Margot Robbie, like so many Australian actors and actresses are massive in America. And, then you got some awesome people like look at like Chris Lilly or the Van Buren brothers that do, is that their name? I think, that do Bondi Hipsters. Like those guys are fucking amazing, and they're unique Australian filmmakers and make amazing Australian content. So there are some really good examples of Australian content, and it does happen, but it's quite rare. And yeah, I think there's a few factors to it. A lot of those factors. Like the Australian TV industry is friggin' tiny. Like compared to the American TV industry, we have so little content. There's not much going on. And we keep recycling the same actors and TV personalities. That's what pisses me off, man. Like you've got this guy called Vince Sorrenti, and nothing against Vince Sorrenti. He was a funny guy like 30 years ago. But he's still, to this day, is on the Today Show on Channel 9. They're still wheeling out the same bloody people every year, and you see the same actors, the same old crew in the same bloody movies, and it's just tired. Why do we keep giving these same people the roles over and over and over? Like, get some new, fresh blood in there. Get some new talent. Like, and no wonder everyone just leaves and goes to LA. It's because they keep wheeling out the same old dinosaur actors in Australia that they have been doing for the last 30 or 40 years. They need to give some new ideas and some fresh talent and yeah, try and come up with some new options. That's what I reckon.
Well, okay, thank you very much. There are lots of questions come through. Unfortunately, I have to wrap it up. But before that, I know you've got a wine brand. What is that?
Yeah, yeah, mate. So this is
tell me.
This is a project that I work on. It's called Little Ripples, and it's a wine brand with a difference.
Bring it closer. Bring the bottle closer.
This is a picture of it, Little Ripples. Can you see that?
Yeah.
That's our wine brand. I think you can see all 4 varieties there a bit better, maybe, hopefully. I don't know if it's too dark. But
If
basically, with Little Ripples,
and see it better.
What we do that's different, for every bottle of wine that we sell, we give away 1 year of clean water to one person in a developing community. So we raise money with the sales of this wine to build water wells in underprivileged communities. So at the moment, we've built 4. Hey,
that one, that brand, yeah.
This wine, yeah, Little Ripples.
Yeah.
So at the moment, we've built 4 water wells so far that's giving water to around 4,000 people. It's providing mainly women and young girls in Uganda at the moment with an opportunity to get an education, to change their life. Water is the most important thing in life, as you all know. Without water, you can't clean yourself, you can't eat properly, you can't have proper sanitation, you can't get an education. So that's why we decided with Little Ripples to try and make a difference by providing like the lifeblood of every human existence, water, to these people. And if you go and buy a bottle of Little Ripples from littleripples.co, or you can check out our store locator. We're in over 250 bottle shops all around Sydney and Melbourne. But every time you buy a bottle of Little Ripples, you are helping one person with 1 year of clean water. And it's a delicious wine. You can't go wrong. So you have a little bit of fun. You help out someone in a developing community. What could be better than that?
Send some.
Yeah, I will. I'll send some through. What do you like? Are you a red drinker or a white drinker? What do you like?
I don't mind. I don't mind everything. So I have to wrap it up. We don't have much time. So it was so lovely talking to you. I think people are gonna see, or who been watching so far, see a different face of you, or we're talking about the things that we both probably been interested talking about. And did you like our conversation?
I loved it. I love it. I love meeting new people. I love meeting people from different cultures. And yeah, it's really good to meet you. And next time I'm in Melbourne, me and you are catching up for a glass of Little Ripples, and we can get more in depth into this conversation.
Sure. It was lovely having you here, Dean. I really, really appreciate that. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, legend. Good to see you, mate. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching us. I had a conversation with Dean Wells. If you want to find out more about Dean, you can go to his Instagram and check him out. Thank you. I'm so sorry that I didn't get a chance to go to your questions. Be well, take care, and keep your smile. Bye.